Assassin's Creed is probably one of the most well-known and revered franchises in modern video game history. The franchise began all the way back in 2007 with Assassin's Creed, and with the latest entry of the franchise, Valhalla, being announced recently and to be released this year, I began thinking about how far this franchise that I've played for so long has changed. This concept occurred to me as I was replaying through the latest entry, Odyssey, and I began comparing it to how the series started out. Everything about the modern Assassin's Creed, Origins, and Odyssey, to the smallest detail, is drastically different than the first couple games the franchise saw. The combat, the stealth, the game worlds, the loot, literally everything is totally different. If you took the first game and one of the two latest games and told someone who had zero previous knowledge of the franchise to play them, they would think that they have no relation to one another whatsoever, except for a couple loose story connections and a couple of other minor things. And in saying that, yeah, they'd be kind of correct, as the franchise is solely connected, and as I said, story and a couple of minor things, and not in mechanics or gameplay or any of that whatsoever. So Assassin's Creed isn't really Assassin's Creed anymore. Roll title card. But I would argue that this isn't really a bad thing by any stretch of the imagination. In fact, I would say that this is a fantastic thing that ironically saved the franchise from being discarded as mediocre, boring, repetitive, and a complete and utter disaster. Allow me to explain. From 2007 all the way up until 2015, Assassin's Creed games released yearly with the same formula with minor additions, as well as a new location and protagonist and characters and map to explore, and do the same repetitious content over and over again until you move on and play something else. Very similar to the annual Call of Duty or sports games that come out every year still to this day. But the games were fun and adored by many because of the stealth, senseless violence, and fantastic storytelling, so people put up with it for a while. The first game all the way up through Revelations in 2011 received positive reviews and acquired the franchise a cult-like following. In 2012, however, Assassin's Creed 3 released and it was less than appreciated by fans and overall underwhelming. The game had a lackluster story and didn't really evolve gameplay-wise, and was a complete disappointment and waste of a setting that could have been so much more than it actually was, being set in revolutionary America. Diehard fans who supported the game despite all that failed to defend the countless technical flaws and bugs, including but not limited to generally unstable environments, crippling NPC issues with dialogue and AI, often crashes, especially on console, sound issues, including but not limited to synchronization, and countless others that, frankly, this video would be a couple hours long if I were to explain all of them. Frankly, there were too many bugs and all that. This game made fans, and the developers for that matter, realize that the franchise needs some sort of evolution. And so in 2013, Black Flag released the fourth major installment and fixed every issue fans had with its predecessor. To sum it up, the game changed and improved the combat system, character progression, storytelling, and side content, and had a whole new layer to the franchise: naval combat. The game was near perfect and squashed away any fears of the franchise becoming stale or boring. 1 year later, the developers tried to evolve the franchise even further with the release of Assassin's Creed Unity. To say this game was a complete and utter failure and almost ruined the entire franchise would be an incredible understatement. The game was fine gameplay and story-wise, but the technical issues were much more frequent and game-breaking, to the point where the entire game was unplayable, even if you wanted to ignore the multiplayer where most of the problems arose. This game was also the first Assassin's Creed made exclusively for next-generation consoles, PlayStation 4 and Xbox One, and was supposed to showcase what the developers were able to do with the new hardware. This single game made many fans realize that the franchise needed change, both on a technical and mechanical level. The developers apparently didn't take a hint from the criticism of Unity, because the following year, in 2015, Assassin's Creed Syndicate released. The game was fine and improved greatly on a technical level when compared with the Unity or even Black Flag, as polished as that game was, but was still lacking in gameplay and storytelling when compared to other games released that very year, such as The Witcher 3 or even Fallout 4, which Syndicate didn't hold a torch to at all. Ubisoft finally realized that they needed to really mix things up in order to get fans invested into this franchise once again. So they skipped creating a game for 2016, and took 2 years putting their heart and soul developing the next game, and what they did with this time would change the series forever. Assassin's Creed Origins finally released in 2017 after 2 years without a major installment, and it took the series in a completely different but brighter direction. This game completely overhauled the combat, stealth, storytelling, gear, character progression, basically everything about an Assassin's Creed game. And even took elements and just threw them into the pot and stirred and decided to see what came out. The game threw the player into the wide open world of ancient Egypt and added hundreds of interesting quests, locations, characters, and loot to find, and tons of commas for me to use in this video. Unlike the other games, Origins focused a lot more on the player's level and how it would affect gameplay. The player's character, Bayek, would find and earn new weapons and armor in order to fight more powerful enemies and gain access to higher leveled, more rewarding content, and progress through the game and story and all that. Stealth was no longer the only viable option, since the overhauled combat made going in guns a-blazing a viable option. Not the only option, but a good one. This allowed for varied and interesting playstyles, and made for very enticing and dynamic gameplay. The storytelling was also drastically improved, and without spoiling anything, because there was actually some pretty dope stuff to spoil. It had some very fun and interesting moments with characters you're able to get invested in and care about. And it definitely has its dull moments, but somehow makes even the game's more boring moments interesting, such as when you're crossing the game's vast deserts and are in the absolute middle of nowhere. Many would see this as extremely boring and just a wait to get to where you're trying to go. But what the game does is that during these long journeys through the middle of nowhere, in the hot desert and all that, your character begins to hallucinate and see some whack hallucinations. And details like this really add to just how great this game is and served as a turning point for the franchise. The following year, Ubisoft took this new formula and improved on it even further in the more ancient and mythical setting of ancient Greece, Assassin's Creed Odyssey. And man, where to start on this game other than it's definitely my favorite Assassin's Creed, and in turn probably one of my favorite games of all time. To start, let's talk about storytelling. This time around, there are two protagonists that the player must choose at the beginning of the game to play as, being brother and sister Alexios and Cassandra. And they're definitely pronounced differently in game because they're like Greek and all that. And yeah, I don't know. Put emphasis, and they're descendants of the great Spartan warrior Leonidas. This choice only matters a little though, since the storytelling for both characters is pretty much the same with minor differences in dialogue, and as well as some occasionally more major stuff that I won't spoil, but the actual storytelling in this game is phenomenal. For the first time ever, there are actual choices the player makes and consequences he or she must deal with. And the choices aren't few and far between. They're seemingly behind every corner, every location, every quest, every character. You're able to hold relationships with other characters and even romance them. Even though 90% of these romances don't really matter or affect gameplay that much. And that certain area of relationships and all that concerning characters could be flushed out and improved upon in the next game. But that's probably one of the few lackluster parts of things. Odyssey also takes advantage of the Greek mythology, and that whole ancient setting includes many of the lore and myths pertaining to that area, such as unique mythical beasts and creatures for the player to hunt and interact with. And overall, it adds a whole ton of stuff to do. The world is chock full of detail and amazing adventures to go, with an almost overwhelming amount of content akin to Skyrim or The Witcher. With the same care and exciting stories of those games, it will definitely keep you playing for a long ass time. It also takes the refined skill tree of Origins and improves upon it even further, adding many fun to use and effective abilities, useful passives, and removes redundant or pointless skills and abilities from the previous games. It just includes them as, just regular stuff you can do, and yeah, stuff like that. Or just completely removes them entirely because of how stupid they were. As much as I like the skill tree though, I hope the next game has a much more organized skill tree, since passives and actual abilities are kind of just thrown in and mixed with each other and you don't really know what you're picking, especially during this first playthrough where you don't really know what's what and what does and how effective stuff is and stuff like that. Anyway, praise over. Point is, this game is a masterpiece, and despite all these improvements, the series has lost its very identity and has strayed too far from the franchise's core. It doesn't feel or play like a regular Assassin's Creed game anymore. Instead feels more like, and I know I've referenced these two games already and it's for very good reason, Skyrim or The Witcher, with a lesser emphasis on stealth or assassinating, which is what the series was founded on. I understand this, but I would argue that this is for the better, since we no longer have an extremely boring, repetitive content anymore, but new and interesting adventures found around every corner in these new RPG-style Assassin's Creeds. And they're just absolutely amazing, as you've probably gathered from what I've been praising. The devs have crafted some amazing open worlds, as I said, with their last two releases, and though I can't wait to explore the next open world in Valhalla, I hope it has a more clear and obvious connection to the previous games, especially story-wise, which it seems like exactly what the devs are shooting for. The return of the Hidden Blade in trailers, and Ubisoft confirming that we'll see some familiar faces and a more intertwined story between the games. All in all, this may be an unpopular opinion with the game's original fans, but I believe Assassin's Creed is at the best point it's ever been. Even if it has lost touch with its beginnings, I'm nothing but hyped and optimistic for the series' future if they keep on heading in the direction they're going with the RPG elements and all that jazz. I just pray to God that they tone down on the monetization of games, because the biggest problem I have with Odyssey is like the drachma boosters and the XP boosters. That stuff is just so stupid and outdated and not consumer friendly at all, and it just needs to go. But yeah, that's about it. So that's all I have to say for today, guys. I hope you enjoyed my analysis of this fantastic franchise. And no matter your opinion, agree with me, disagree, feel free to leave a comment, because I love being told what I do wrong. But yeah, I'll respond to all of them and would be happy for the feedback. Thanks for watching, and I'll see y'all again next week with a new video essay. Not sure what it's gonna be yet, but it'll be something. Anyway, see you guys next time.